Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us on the PowettPlay Podcast. As always, it's me, Jordan, Shannon, and Kieran Powell. How are you, Kai?
Not too bad, Jordan. How are you?
Yeah, I'm not too bad at all. Thank you very much. Where are you in the world?
Beautiful Fort Lauderdale,
Oh, fantastic.
favorite place.
Oh, lovely.
So yeah, beautiful sunshine. Had Formula One this weekend. Had the air show. Perfect weekend.
Oh, sounds fantastic. That's brilliant. Before we get started, I just want to say, obviously, thank you to all the listeners and people who've been viewing, especially the last two episodes in terms of the West Indies A selection. People discussing and suggesting, obviously, people who've missed out and stuff. And we really do appreciate the interaction, people commenting about selection. And ultimately, that's why we do this, because it brings up a lot of conversation and people's opinions. Before we get started on this episode here, I sort of wanted to thank everybody for getting in touch and watching. But the purpose of today's conversation, we're going to be looking at the Breakout League in the Caribbean. It's the inaugural, it's the first season. What you make of it so far, Guy?
Yeah, no, just before I jump into that, Jordan, I think you definitely touched a very important point in thanking all the supporters. I think there's only just one thing we can ask of them. We're not asking you for any payment, just like, comment, and subscribe.
Yeah,
Very
definitely.
simple. Start
That's
of the
it.
video, like, comment, subscribe. I'm gonna pause for a minute. I'm gonna give you a chance to do that. Good. All right, here we go. Breakout League. No, I think it is pretty much what I expected in terms of the performances. I don't think that there's been anyone that stood out. I think the importance of the initiative is to, I guess, give younger players further opportunities to play.
Yeah,
Obviously, playing T20 cricket requires a certain skill set and a certain level of consistency in terms of playing and getting exposure to
yeah,
that format of the game. I think what has become evident for me is that there needs to be quite a few bridges to transition players from their domestic or regional setting into, let's say, a professional league like a CPL or into a West Indies T20 team.
yeah.
So I think this is more so just like an early indicator of, I guess, potential talent within the regions. I think what needs to happen now is to build on the back of this is something like a Caribbean T20 where you have, I guess, more so guys that show talent
Yeah.
to have an opportunity amongst more senior players within the region. And then, you continue to build those little stepping stones of a pathway, developmental pathway for these players. And
Yeah.
then the guys that show talent and are able to cope at that level, then you can put them into a CPL against the very best T20 players in the region and the overseas players of high quality that are coming into the Caribbean. Because if you take guys directly from this and throw them into a CPL, for example, obviously the performances in this tournament haven't been great. I don't think anyone was expecting this to be the most productive tournament in the world. It's more so about talent identification.
Yeah.
But if you put them up against the best T20 players in the Caribbean and some of the top T20 players coming in from around the world, then it's going to be a big gulf and a big disparity in performances and what you're trying to do here. So I think you have to continue to be little building blocks. I like it for what it is in terms of talent identification.
Yeah.
I think that if there could be something similar done for, let's say, 50 over cricket
I was going
and
to say that. Yeah.
not necessarily 40 cricket, but even like how in England counties have second 11 cricket.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
even if they do, like, yeah, if they just say from this they create three teams, four teams of the best 11s and play, let's say, a 2-day tournament for young, talented guys throughout the region. You don't have to have each franchise. You can compound this a bit more and
Yeah.
make it into a more holistic Caribbean, like, let's say, North, South, Central, and whatever else you want to call the fourth team. But you have four teams where you have like a 2-day tournament and guys get the opportunity to play some red ball cricket and some 50 over cricket as well. I think that these would be great stepping stones into continually developing the younger players as well as creating an ecosystem and a cricket season within the Caribbean, because I've
Yeah.
always been big on having a season. I think that we need to have two blocks of 4-day games as opposed to the one block of
Yeah.
7. I think that you can have the first block, as I mentioned, break for, let's say, a month. You come back and you play your Super 50, which will last. Everyone plays everyone twice. That will last probably a month. Take a break. You come back and you play your Caribbean T20, you take a break, and then you come back and you play your last block of 4-day cricket. And then that leads into a breakout league, um, and the CPL. So then you have a strong 6 to 8 month window of cricket, given the Caribbean is ideally placed in terms of weather, um, availability, and options of having cricket all year round. I think outside of that, you can make it mandatory that each regional board has their own domestic competitions, whether it is a 4-day competition, I'm sorry, a 3-day competition
Yeah.
or 2-day competition, a 50 over competition, and a T20 competition, to continue to give guys within the sub-regions opportunities to be looked at and discover as much talent as possible. Because, I mean, West Indies can't develop the talent unless it becomes evident to them and they don't know who's available if there's
Yeah.
not cricket being played within each sub-region. So I think the territorial boards also have a very important role to play. I know, for example, the Leeward Islands has done a horrible job at that during my tenure as a cricketer in my former life. um, but no, I think that it's extremely important to know that places like Barbados and Trinidad in particular have very good domestic club structures where this club cricket played annually. I know somewhere like Antigua as well has a very good club structure where there's a T20, a 40 over, and 2-day cricket played annually as
Right.
well. So
Okay.
those are places that you find obviously produce cricketers. You look at Trinidad has a slew of T20 cricketers that come through.
Yeah.
Barbados has a slew of players that go on to play for the West Indies. Antigua has a slew of players for a small ecosystem that goes on to play for the Leeward Islands and
Yeah.
for the West Indies because there's cricket being played.
Yeah.
So the rest of the territories and sub-territories within the Caribbean need to take a page from that book. And I think it needs to be made mandatory because there's no point of having a cricket board when there's no cricket.
No. No. And like you were saying, it's just about this structure. It's about, like you said, it's this planning, it's this pre-planning. It's about, from under 18, say, to, your second 11 cricket, age group cricket, like over in here in England, you've got your age group cricket, then you have sort of your development, scholarship bits, and then obviously second 11 into your first 11 on the county circuit. But what you're saying as well is obviously about this constant planning and structure sort of thing. And I was going to ask you then, you're talking about say from a Leeward Islands perspective. So the cool and smooth which is taking place at the minute, will anything come out of that from a benefit to help Leeward Islands cricket, for instance? I know from a T20 side of things.
Well, that's been a tournament that's been going for some time. That's not anything new at this point in time. I think it had stopped for a short period of time, and they had switched to Syncus because of some discrepancies they had
Right.
with, I guess, the teams and the ownership. But benefit to the Leeward Islands on a holistic scale, no,
No.
because that's an Antiguan club T20 tournament. I think teams can bring in maybe one or two players from overseas,
Is that
but
how it works out? Right.
will
Okay. I
that
know what you
benefit?
mean.
Yeah, it's not as if it's something that encompasses all of the Leeward Islands, and it's a Leeward Islands T20 competition
No.
that you can then therefore go on to see players from the different respective sub territories and have some sort of impact.
Yeah.
And as I said, that's why you'd find the Leeward Islands team is heavily, always 50% or more Antiguans in the past few number of years, because I guess they play more cricket,
Yeah.
and they get more exposure as opposed to players from the other islands. So unless you're someone that did something exceptional at youth cricket and got into a West Indies under 19 team or whatever the case is, you generally struggle to, I guess, find your way to shore.
Mm. Yeah. I also need to, look at some of the some of the performances in the breakout, and there's been, some of them are not surprising. Kevlin Anderson scored, he's scored. I think he's like, well, he was the leading run scorer when I last looked. Jid Gooley again up there, Joshua De Silva up there. These are names that that you're expecting to be up there because, as we discussed weeks ago, it probably doesn't really fall into the category of breakout because he's, Joshua De Silva, for instance, has played Test cricket, so it's hardly falling under the the idea of a breakout. But I will apologise because I'm going to probably pronounce this guy's name wrong. But I did notice that a guy, Navin Bidesi, I think he pronounced his surname.
It is.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
was looking at it. He scored runs and he's taken wickets, and he played for the CCT. I think he played a first class game in 2022, and then previous to that, it was a few years ago. So he's obviously his opportunities have been extremely limited when you look at it from a statistical perspective. Might be stuff going on outside his life. I appreciate all that sort of stuff, but it was quite refreshing to see somebody like that go into a breakout and perform because he's taken that opportunity, and that's what we keep speaking about on here is people giving opportunities and taking them and then thinking, right, what doors can I open? And hopefully something, if he maintains his performances throughout the rest of the campaign, you don't know what happens then from a CPL perspective, but alternatively then from a breakout in terms of from a 40-day, sorry, from the 4 days to four, the limited overs, when that starts. I do still think there's been a few performances there that have some breakout players who, especially in the 20s and the 20, 21, 22, where it just gives them that little bit of exposure. So I do think that there's been some positives about it so far.
Yeah, no, 100% there's been positives. I think there's this Brathwaite guy from
Shan Brathwaite, yeah.
Barbados. Seems very, very excited, but he managed to get an 80 something, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think I got like
I've
80, yeah.
I've seen Bidesi, as you said, he seems to have had a few number of good games. Um, I've seen a young leg spinner from the Leeward Islands that I liked quite a few years back, actually, for the West Indies under 19 team, but he didn't get selected. In Micah McKenzie, I think that he's got very good control.
Right.
Bowls a nice googly, but what I've seen as well. Um, and looked like he handled pressure pretty well as well. So I mean, there's been quite a few, as I said, one-off impressive performances. What you want to do now is identify who you can sort of, I guess, highlight and use these performances and
Yeah.
take these players and them forward, whether it be into a regional franchise setup or on a development contract set up for the regional franchises. Because as I mentioned a few episodes back as well, I think that the regional franchises need to have a wider pool of players. So I
Yeah.
think even if it's 15 players and another five developmental contracts, then that makes a bit more sense. Because you look at, I've seen something where they've got analysts assigned to all of these teams for this tournament, but then each regional franchise team doesn't have an analyst assigned to it. So it's like, it's a bit all over the place. Like it's sort of a guinea pig thing where they're testing with this, where you would have liked to see a more streamlined endeavor where each franchise gets assigned an analyst, because that helps with player development and player growth as well within the franchise system.
Yeah.
And then they come down to this level and continue to assist with the breakout league players. But I think that from what I've gathered so far and what I've seen, what I've made of the breakout league, obviously first year, tooling problems, but I think, yeah, I think all in all, slightly disappointed with, let's say, a Barbados, for example, because
Yeah.
when I looked at the squads that were selected, I pretty much expected a Trinidad, a Barbados, and a Leeward Islands to be fighting sort of for the teams that go through,
Yeah.
especially with the names on paper for that Barbados team. I mean, you look at Barbados, for example, as I said, you've got Johan Lane and Jediah Blades that are not in their team. Um, that, to me, when you look at young bowlers in regional cricket, those two are two guys that I thought they should have given an opportunity to come into a Barbados
Yeah.
ecosystem and see what it's like, because I think those two guys will play for Barbados for some time into the future. So
Yeah.
um, that's very interesting from my vantage point. But I think those two guys have been performing well, regardless of probably not playing for their home country. They've still been putting up good numbers.
Yeah, well, that's it, and that's what they're following on their momentum from the 4 day stuff, which is what you want to see, and that's where touching back on the point that you made about you mentioned about the weather that you get in the Caribbean. You could be playing 300 days worth of cricket in a year. The weather's that good there, and that's what you kind of want to see. Is that you look at Johan Lane, for instance, it's that constant momentum. So he's only going to get better because of the volume of cricket that you're playing. And you mentioned there, and I picked up on it before because I'm sure you spoke about him before, that Mika McKenzie. And you look at him here, so you look at your situation. So you really rate him as a cricketer. You've seen him around, etc. And he's bowling well. He's got a nice array of deliveries, which will do fantastically well in T20 cricket. And he performs well. So he finishes this campaign with, say, 12, 13, 14 wickets, nice economy rate, and it's ideal. And you think, where does that go then now? So we've identified a cricketer. Young, perfect, fits the bill for what we want. And you think, where's he not going to go? He's not going to play in the CPL, for instance, this year. So where does he go?
Well, I think from what I've heard is that 18 of these players are supposed to be guaranteed CPL contracts. So I'm
Right.
not sure if there is scope for him to get into the CPL. But what I'd like to see is because obviously you look at a Leeward Islands, for example,
Yeah.
Hayden Walsh Jr., I think, played maybe 2 or 3 games. But he wasn't given like a full run this season. So if you're not going to use him in 4 day cricket, I think it's always a good thing to have a leg spinner. Especially if you've got a young leg spinner that you can start grooming for now,
Yeah.
because you look at a Raheem Cornwall who's probably not got much left in the tank. You can start grooming him alongside a Raheem Cornwall, alongside a Daniel Durham, and it gives that variety, especially in a 40 game where there's not much leg spin. He's bowling a pretty good googly at the moment as well, from what I've seen. So it's
Yeah.
someone that has that level of consistency and control. Uh, Very good addition across all formats of the game. So I definitely like to see him come into, I guess, the contracted players from the Leeward Islands standpoint, and see how he goes. I mean, you look at a Nathan Edward, for example, who,
Yeah.
again, another player that played in that West Indies under 19 team a few years ago, that I thought Michael McKenzie should have been in that team as well.
All right. Okay.
Um, he got a 5 wicket haul against Barbados, and
Mm.
so this is someone that will be pushing for a place in, I guess, that franchise, and that's what you want to see. Like, you see
Awesome. Yeah.
guys getting these opportunities, and making a mark, and saying, this is what I'm capable of if given an opportunity. So I think, as I said, holistically, this tournament, I wasn't expecting, I guess, anyone to set the place on fire.
Mm.
What it has done is shown that there are players there. I mean, I looked at some of the stats, for example, this morning. Obviously, T20 cricket, you're looking at runs,
Yeah.
but you're looking at strike rate as well. And I think it's something like the top 16 persons in terms of strike rate are bowlers of very lower order, all round hitters. So there's no top order batter
Yeah.
that has a strike rate within the top 16 persons in the tournament. So that tells me that if West Indies are asking for players to be more aggressive, and playing certain roles, as has been a blueprint for Super 50 for the past few years,
Yeah.
then you're going to want these young players as well to start falling into that mold of, this is the style of play that we're looking to adapt. And that's going to cause players to, I guess, sacrifice a bit of consistency to fit a role that the team wants. Because, for example, you're looking at guys in the power play to maximize
Yeah.
that power play. You're looking for specific guys to come and do certain things in the middle order, whereas you're not just rotating the strike, but you're looking to hit boundaries and rotate the
Yeah.
strike as well. I think that guys are getting bogged down, and you can see that there's, I guess, no style of play that is being dictated to these guys in terms of saying, okay, we are looking to highlight people to
Yeah.
play these roles. And as young people, we want you to start getting into the mold of thinking once you're playing at this level, this is what you need to do. You look at that young 14-year-old kid in the
Yeah.
IPL
Yeah.
that scored the century. Pretty much he knows this is what he has to do. And the way he goes about it, playing against international bowlers at
Yeah.
14 and being able to make a century shows. I mean, obviously, I'm not trying to compare because India has a
Yeah, it's
gulf of
different.
talent and a gulf of opportunities compared to what's happening in the Caribbean. But what I'm saying is the comparable thing here is the roles and the clarity of which he's going about executing
Correct.
given his role. That's what I'd like to see.
Can I ask you a question? And it's completely away from West Indies cricket, but it's about clarity. But it's to do with England in the county championship. So at the moment, there's obviously this massive emphasis that Brendan McCullum's putting on England cricketers to be aggressive. It's scoring aggressive and it's being aggressive. Well, at the start of the county championship this season so far, the strike rates for the batters in particular are between about 55 and say, I think the max is about 72, give or take. So from a clarity perspective, is that not coming down into the say? We're talking. I'm talking more specifically, obviously, about England here. But do you think there's an issue? There is issues with clarity coming down into these important places, or to the people, should I say?
Well, I think what's happening there is that some guys are probably saying to themselves, "All right, I'm not the type of player that they're looking for, so I'm gonna ride this wave of McCallum out because he's not gonna be coach forever. I'm gonna continue to play my game in this certain style because
Mm.
at the end of the day, if if my game isn't what England are looking for, I can't go then and sacrifice trying to become that mold of player
Yeah,
and lose my county spot for lack of runs because at the
yeah,
end of the day, that's their job as well.
yeah,
And they still have to secure their jobs at the county level. So
yeah,
I guess that's where the disparity comes in. That's where it may seem like it's a lack of clarity, but it might be guys being absolutely clear that I am definitely not
yeah,
going to fit into that mold or that style of play.
yeah,
And so I'm going to stick to what's working for me here.
yeah,
And hopefully, once the McCullum era ends, then when the next set of, I guess, selectors come in, maybe
yeah,
you're more favorable or appealing to them for their style of play.
yeah. No, I really appreciate that answer there because I know I put you probably, but we did digress quite a bit there away from the Caribbean side of things. But I kind of
Yeah.
wanted to ask you that based on clarity because it's very true. This, when you talk about, structure at the very start of the conversation, and then you talk about clarity, there's a lot of, it needs to flow, it needs to make sense for it to work and get that consistency, and then your performances, and then that's when you get, I don't know, well, I sort of relating it to business a little bit, but you kind of get that supply chain where everything's flowing in the right direction to ultimately, work in from a business perspective, and that's sort of it all goes down to that communication side of things. Um, and
Yeah.
going back to the T20 breakout, I kind of just want to make it'd be nice to see some of the successes have a bit of a nice, whether it is part of the contracts that they get for the CPL or some form of like benefit and some process planning for the future for them as well. So I do appreciate the answer on England, by the way, as well.
No, I think it's. I mean, as I said, I think that might be what the situation is, but who am I to, I guess, exactly say that is the case? And definitely, no, you have to continue to develop these younger guys in terms of the Breakout League, continue to provide more opportunities for them, continue to expose them to experienced players and coaches. It would have been nice to see, I guess, the guys that have had success for the West Indies around this as sort of mentors. I mean, obviously the
Yeah,
likes of the Bravos, the Pollards, the Lawrence, etc., the IPL, but you still have guys like the Lendl Simmons, Chris Gale isn't
yeah,
an active player anymore, the Danish Ramdens. Marlon Samuels, all these guys that can come in and, I guess, speak to these young guys and tell them, this is what it was like for us. And this is how we were able to achieve a certain level of sustained success for, a 4 to 8 year period based on, the global standards and what we had in our team and understanding our roles and our clarity, as well as having a Darren Samede who was the 2-time winning captain and is currently the coach. So he knows what he needed then and he knows what he's looking for now as a coach.
Yeah, definitely. No, I think it's been good to have a chat with you about this. And like I said, it goes back to the same word of clarity. And I think if there was a takeaway from tonight's episode, it's about clarity. And I think that it shows the importance of that. And then you briefly touched on it about the young lad who scored the century in the IPL. And is that because there is that clarity within cricket India? Potentially, yeah, you probably say so. So you look at the positives of that, but with the clarity versus obviously what we've been discussing. So I know that we've me and you speaking, we discussed the A-team squad for the first two tests, and you pick your 11s according to that. But we're going to have a catch up pretty soon, aren't we? Because you put a bit of a detailed plan in terms of how you'd like to see, the training side of things and the thought process there. And I'm really looking forward to hearing your thoughts on that because, you shared some of the insights with me, and it goes to show that when you're picking these 11s, these aren't 11s that you're picking because of, off the back of statistics necessarily, but you're looking at it from a wider picture and a more detailed approach in terms of success and developing, West Indies as a whole from a cricketing side of things. So I'm looking forward to catching up with you soon to discuss that. And we'll touch base a little bit as well on the breakout and see how that's developing. But yeah, it's been good to catch up with you, Kai.
Sounds good, Jordan. We will have a lot of content coming your way soon, viewers. So stay tuned and look forward for some exciting team selections and preparation plans.
Cool. Like Karen said at the very start, like, subscribe. What's the other one? Comment. Like, subscribe, comment. See you all soon, guys. Thanks very much.
And share.
Yes.
And share. That's also important. Share it to all your friends.
Brilliant. Cheers, Kai.
Cheers, John.